Hi guys, Tuga here with a new video, and this video will be a RBG's tier list video for Season 3 of Dragonflight. People have been asking me. I'm actually playing a lot more RBGs these days. I'm playing in a team right now. I am a target caller for the team, which is a guild in Archimon, a French server. And I am like target calling. Not really the most fun thing to do, but still someone has to do it. And I'm playing a warrior, so I guess I'm the one that has sharpened blade. So again, if I say sharpen on someone, generally it can get dropped. I have also a lot of like not really hearsay, but I talked to a lot of high level RBG players, to people from my team also, or even people outside of these circles or from other streamers and such. So I have a certain not expertise, but I have knowledge about the placements in the meta and what specs are strong, what specs are quite weak. Again, in RBGs, everything is kind of playable, but let's be honest, in LFG, they're going to take the meta specs. If you're creating your own like team or community, you can bring anything and you can make it work. But you have certain comps that are more meta than others. I might make a comp video very soon so you can actually know what comp are actually working right now. I have also some stats from thus far, from 1800 and plus. 2100 I could also like see. Again, it becomes very niche. The amount of like players in 2100 is quite low, but we're going to talk about that as well. Again, not necessarily representation is always the meta, but you can kind of follow the meta from that point. Now, again, it's an opinion. You may share it or you may not. Please let me know in the comment section below where you're not sharing, but also whenever you're sharing the same opinion as me, but also kind of explain why you do share the opinion or why you're not really sharing the opinion and you think I'm not right on a few things, which is normal on a tier list. So I'm going to start right away with Warrior. Let's talk about Warriors. We have 3 specs: Arms, Fury, and Protection Warrior. Representation wise, it does feel like this also. Fury Warrior is not that good. It has the potential to be good, but the problem is your MS effect, you don't really have the time to stack it because you can also be CC'd. But also, whenever someone applies their own version of Moral Strike, for example, DH or whatever, it's going to override the first stack, so you will never have the opportunity to stack it up. But if you have the opportunity, it could be even better than Arms Warrior. But it's too much of a theory. Like it's not really practical. So for me, Fury Warrior is not that good. I'm going to put them at C tier. It could be lower, but I think Fury Warrior could be playable still. It's a melee that has a lot of damage, has some AoE effects. You can target call as a Fury Warrior as well. So I think it's not like dumpster tier, but I think if you're comparing with a Arms Warrior, which I think is A tier, it's really night and day. It could be even D tier, but it depends. Maybe I will just remove one of these tiers. I think I'm going to remove one of these, so I'm going to remove this one, and then it is kind of C tier. Why Arms Warrior A tier? Because they have Sharpened Blade, they have AoEs, they have Double Blade Storm. Again, a lot of bleed damage. One of the best Moral Strike in the game with Sharpened Blade, by the way. If you're a good target caller, you can basically lead your team fights into victory. You're not very mobile, so if like a base is attacked and you need someone to drop, Arms Warrior will likely not drop from their team fight to go for the other base, so you have to know that as well. It is very capable. I don't think it's just. I think in RPGs, melees don't really run the show most of the time, but Arms Warrior can run the show. It does a lot of damage. Generally, it is in one of the comps that are high rated. For example, here you see it's third in the melee representation, and whenever you go higher, you also still see a lot of Arms Warrior. It is strong, definitely. It's probably one of the most represented like specs into the game. You only need one though. You can stack Havoc Demon Hunters, for example, but you cannot stack an Arms Warrior. I think it's not really optimal. But if you have only one Arms Warrior, it can actually make your comp way better. It's not a necessity though, so that's why it's A tier. But again, you have choices, and I think Arms Warrior is a good choice in your team if you're like looking up for a comp you want to make and you want to play with friends and you want to pick up a few people, I think Arms Warrior should be in your team, for example. Protection Warrior. The issue is if Protection Warrior could actually face other Protection Warriors, it could be interesting. Or if you didn't have to face like a Vengeance Demon Hunter or a Garden Druid, it could be interesting. But the issue is the difference between those two specs and Protection Warrior is again night and day. And I'm gonna put them at D tier. I think it is playable. You could maybe take a spot of a DPS, but then again, why would you take the spot of a DPS? It has some burst damage, but capacities of actually carrying the flag or carrying a zone and not die and like anti-tag and spin the flag is like close to zero. You're going to lose the flag, you're going to lose the node. So basically you're like a team fighter normally, but the issue is you're not fighting really the meta specs. Physical damage is not meta. So your wall that you have as a PvP talent is not really that useful versus Destruction Warlocks, Balance Druids and such. So that's why I'm going to put them at D tier right now. Assassination Rogue, I think it's very strong in specific comps or specific maps. I think in Kotmugu, Assassination Rogue can work perfectly even without the comp. But if you're playing with an Assassination Rogue, generally you want a second rogue in your team or a second like stealthy that could actually like stick to a node or ghosted. At least you have like the uncertainty on your enemy team, for example. But if you're playing as an assassination rogue, highly likely you have to maybe sit a node because you're the only stealthy, but also you're not that like safe as well as a sub rogue. I think sub rogue is just way better. So for me, assassination rogue, I'm going to put them at A tier still because I do feel like that comp is and has potential, but I don't think it's like game breaking. I think it's really closer to B tier than A tier. So again, we'll have to see which specs are going to go A tier. But right now, I think it's a good spec, has potential, has some comps, but not likely that you're going to see a lot of like assassination rogues in your games regardless. A lot of assassination rogues on this list are actually sub rogues that are like respec into assassination rogue, because again it's not like solo shuffle and you can respec from subtlety rogue to assassination rogue and you will also count as an assassination rogue, for example. So sub rogue is a S tier spec. I think it's the best spec in the game. You like actually want and need a sub rogue in your team. If you're playing without a sub rogue, it's not like you're trolling, but you're gimping yourself. Sub rogue gives you a lot of opportunities. It's the best node sitter, same as a Garden Druid pretty much, but like way better. You can actually like ghost and win a lot of nodes because of a balanced druid with you. I think as a whole it is also the most represented above 2100, but not even that. I think every comp kind of needs a rogue and every comp wants a subtlety rogue. So again, I think the demand is too big for the alpha, so I think S tier is probably, and in my books, warranted the spot at least. I think if there was a S plus, it would be S plus, but I think I'm going to keep it as S for now. Outlaw rogue, I think it's a bit less good as an assassination rogue. I think it's still there because it's a rogue spec, but realistically, people are going to play sub rogue. I do feel like it's way more useful than Fury, even in team fights. So that's why I'm going to put them at B tier. But I think stealthy, if you don't have a sub rogue and you have auto rogue, it's not the end of the world, but you're gimping yourself again. But it's still better than no rogue, right? I think rogue, you kind of need one in your team, or else you have to compensate it crazy or like have great maps that doesn't need a rogue. For example, Kotmugu kind of not need a rogue, but you cannot really count on a map selection in your comps. You want to have like everything like open for all the maps and being good for all the maps. Hunter is very strong, underrepresented because again, it's not like you actually need a hunter in your team, but if you want big damage and it's a ranged one, it could actually be an hunter and you can actually explode some people. Again, in Kotmugu, if you're playing sniper shot, generally if they're like in middle, like the orb is middle or whatever, you can one-shot someone regardless, so you can always retake the orbs quite easily. It is highly map dependent though. I'm going to put them at A tier still, I think below arms warrior, because you don't really want a hunter in every single comp. I think the demand is not that big, but if you're playing Hunter, you can really carry games. You see also it's like third represented, but I think it's mainly because hunters are like a overplayed spec in RPGs and just BGs in general. But I think if I'm looking at comps that I would like to have a hunter, you have to sacrifice something, and I feel like what you're sacrificing is not always like 1-to-1 like good with an Hunter. BM Hunter is actually B tier in my books. You don't see a lot of BM Hunters, but it's actually a great node sitter because again you have pets, and you could easily like have an undead pet that cannot get sapped, and you put them at the flag, and pretty much no one can cap it, even if you're Cyclone. They have to actually triple CC the two pets and you to actually be able to cap, and there is no triple CC 6 second duration CC. So again, you're not going to have a triple fear on a hunter that is normally capable. So I don't think it's that bad. I do feel like again it's not really safe to sit and node as a BM hunter because you could still die in a 1v1 situation. It's either the BM hunter or the other player, and BM hunter doesn't really have that much like defensive capacities, but I think the damage right now is still good, so you could 1v1 reliably. I don't think it's like the most useful like spec out there, because if you could choose between a rogue or a BM hunter would not even be in the conversation. But I think if you're wanting a base sitter and you have no choice and you have a hunter, I think BM hunter is actually a capable one. Please don't put a MM hunter in a base because it would be like wasted damage. But a BM hunter can like basically sit a base and do very good. Survival hunter though is not in my books. I think it's really low. I think I'm going to put them at C tier. It's not represented and it's warranted. It's very, very squishy. Can't do the same things as in arenas, I would say. The survivability is not that good. The damage is good, but I think like a lot of specs have that kind of damage. The CC is meh at best. It's there, but it's a polymorph DR, so it can be broken by just a attack, or you're playing like the diamond eyes, but it's a PvP talent that you're going to use, and sometimes you don't want to diamond eyes. And overall, I think if you have a choice between a survival hunter and someone else, you would not take a survival hunter, for example. Vengeance Demon Hunter, I think it's S tier, very good. You are very mobile. Your best maps are, of course, the flag maps. Those are the maps where you're very competitive with Garden Druid, actually. I think, yes, the node sitting bases are not that good for you, but again, nobody's going to kill you in 1v1, so I think it's a very, very strong spec. It's not the same as a protection warrior. You could reliably sit a base without like losing the base. You just need to not stand next to the flag or being able to CC long enough to have your backup come for the balance route, for example. I think it has okay damage. That's it. I think it does its job. I think it's the best, like second best or top best tank in the game. So again, I think it's warranted to be S tier. Havoc Demon Hunter is for me the best melee in the game, like behind Sub Rogue. It has a lot of AoE damage, a lot of CC, a lot of defensives, a lot of ways to be very impactful with your mobility also. If someone needs help, the Demon Hunter can actually go back and help your friends. But I think not a lot of specs have that capacity. They can find rogues, they can find Garden Druids in RPG settings. Again, you have ways to be very strong, so I think it's a very strong spec. Usually you're not really the target call-up, you could be, but you're quite squishy on that front. But overall, your AoE and your damage is like unparalleled. Normally, you should be like top DPS if you're like doing team fights. But right now, I think it's a S tier spec. Garden Druid also S tier. I think it's like above Vengeance Demon Hunter in my opinion. I think below Sub Rogue because again, As a Garden Druid, you have some options to go for Vengeance Demon Hunter, but I think as a sub rogue, you don't want to have an option. You just want a sub rogue. Garden Druid, it's very hard to kill. I think it's the best flag carrier in the game. It's also the best like base sitter in the game. You are not going to die if you have a healer behind you. Like a lot of tanks, but I think Garden Druid even more. And I think you have some okay damage, and you have like the best CC in the game with Cyclone. So I think overall a very good spec. I would say S plus, but I'm going to keep it like S clean. And right now I think Garden Druid is something you really want in your comps. Feral Druid, I think I'm going to put them at the B tier spot. It's very niche. It can do a lot of damage, but you have to play around a specific comp. You're losing a spec by taking Feral Druid pretty much. It can do some AoE cleaving. It has Cyclone. It does have Stealth, which is also very strong. But in my opinion, again, how do you fit a Feral Druid in your comp if you have a Balanced Druid and a Rogue, for example? It's very hard, and you don't have a lot of impact in the team fights if you don't have a great like front line. If you're playing with an Arms Warrior, let's say an Arms Warrior with a Demon Hunter, with let's say an Assassination Rogue and a Feral Druid, it could be comprehensive to not play Rogue, but again, you have to sacrifice someone if you want to play with a rogue, or you're sacrificing a ranged DPS, which in my opinion are more meta in RBGs, and that's not really something you want. And you also see like representation wise, it's below Assassination Rogue, but I feel like a lot of Bounce Druids or Resto Druids are actually like respecing to Feral, so that could be skewed. So I don't think it's like that important. So for me, it's going to be B tier. Resto Druid, it is not really well represented, but it's also normal. But I think it is a good spec. I just think it gets outshined by a lot of other specs. I'm going to put them at B tier because it can spin flag correctly, but it's just very mobile. It has some good healing, but it's not optimal. So I'm going to put them in front of a Feral Druid, but behind BM Hunter. The heal is good, but if you have choice between a Preservation Evoker or Resto Druid, you would pick a Preservation Evoker, for example. Balance Druid, S tier, I think just behind or above Sub Rogue. Very important. If you have a Balance Druid and he knows how to play, it's very easy to ghost a node as a Sub Rogue and actually take another node. You're very mobile, you have damage. Yes, you're going to be targeted, but I think in RPGs it's a bit less a burden, to be honest. It's very hard to target the Bounce Druid if he knows how to do and to make you line the healers. In general, you're going to have insane damage. It's very hard to compare to a Bounce Druid if you're not a Bounce Druid, but I think a team with a Bounce Druid and a team without Bounce Druid, it's night and day, pretty much. Frost Decay, I like it. I think it does take a spot of a DPS, that's why I'm going to put them at B tier. I think it can be good. The multi-stun, if you can grab like three guys and like you're surrounded by other people, you could actually do a big AoE stun and it could really turn a fight. The issue is, do you want to rely on it's not really a gimmick, but do you want to rely on a gimmick pretty much? Do you want to rely on that, or do you want to have an Unholy Decay, which is just a better DPS right now? I think Frost Decay, it has the stuns, which are something that is quite good in PvP. But if you have a Havoc Demon Hunter, do you really need another AoE stun? That's really a question you could ask to your raid leader or to yourself if you are going to make a comp. But speaking of a better spec, I think Unholy Decay is A tier. I want to put them at S tier, but I think they need some separation, and I don't think it's like that necessary to have an Unholy Decay. It can jail, and you can actually grip the flag carrier pretty efficiently if you're doing it correctly. You could be a nightmare for them with Chain of Eyes, and they kind of need a Paladin to get away, which is not always something they have. I think it lacks like the few things that other DPSs have, and I would say it is a MS effect. And also you can have a ramp up. It's very hard to ramp up on someone whenever you have to switch targets every single time. And that's the issue with Unholy Decay that is compared to a Frost Decay. A big issue like Frost Decay don't really have a ramp up effect. It has like a go and you have a lot of damage and then you have a lot less damage. But Unholy Decay has a ramp up, and if you cannot really ramp up, your damage is going to stick to a normal level of damage. And again, if you read like a target caller is going to say go disc priest, and then you go to disc priest, and then you go to boomy because it got called boomy, and then he calls hunter, or he calls destruction warlock. Every single time you have to go back and create new festering wounds, have a dot backup on the enemy, try to grab another guy to blind sleet and then do a go, but at that point maybe they would already switch a target, for example. So it's not always easy, and I understand that right now with the new way of playing of Unholy Decay, it is not really a lot of bad damage. It's pretty much like ramp up and then like trying to bust those festering wounds to do a lot of damage. So right now I think it's 8 tier. I think above Assassination Rogue though, but it's not like a must-have in your team. Blood DK, I'm going to put them at C tier. It's very niche. You could chill like a healer, could be very annoying. I saw a few Blood DKs as a DPS, pretty much. They were playing like double tank. It's obnoxious. It's very hard to stop. It's unkillable. They can spit the flag like forever, as long as they don't get CC'd. So right now I think it's C tier. It could be a bit higher if you like talking about like tank stuff, but I don't see, like, I don't perceive Blood DK as a objective tank. It just feels like a tank that is a nuisance to the enemy team pretty much. Devastation Evoker, I'm going to put them at the top of 8 here. I think it's strong. People are sleeping on it. It's very hard to stop. It has CC, it has damage. A lot of the damage is actually like scary as well. And you see also the numbers, they are correct. For a spec that is underplayed compared to Hunter, the numbers are there, right? You see like 10, you have a lot less like evokers than the hunters, and they have like the same kind of numbers at 2100. So for me right now, I do expect them to be very strong, and people are kind of sleeping on it because people prefer boomies and destruction warlocks. Understandable, but I think you could make a comp with 3 classes, like 2 front lines and just 1 rogue. I think it could be also quite nice to play around. Augmentation Evoker, I think it's F tier. Don't play that in RBGs, it is not strong. It was strong, but right now it is not, so just don't play it. Preservation Evoker, S tier spec. Do I want to separate the 3 top healers? I could do that. I think I'm going to put them at top of 8 here because it is top 3, it is not top 1 for sure. So I need to separate between the S and the A tiers. But I think Preservation Evoker is a fantastic choice if you want to have a RBG healer. Has a lot of mobility, rescue is so strong, you have some damage, you have great AoE healing, and it's very hard to punish a Preservation Evoker as well. So for me, it is A tier, like guaranteed. Holy Paladin is a niche healer. I'm going to put them at top of B tier. It depends on maps. If you're playing like with a flag and like a flag carrier, Ultimate Sacrifice into Divine Shield is an immediate stop. And if you're very close of grabbing the flag from the enemy, like the EFC, and you are like on the spot and you try to survive, Ultimate Sacrifice, Divine Shield, it's over. You could also bop. You could also Ultimate Sacrifice into bop yourself, for example. You have a lot of ways to stop all of the damage, and you can actually like make the team fight way easier. But I think you don't really have a spot for a Holy Paladin if you really want the meta comps. And it's also dependent on maps. If you have a flag map, it's perfect. If you have a domination map, it's a bit less. If you have like Eye of the Storm, it's really crap, for example. So yeah, I think B tier is warranted. I think it's on the same level as Restoration Druid. So for me right now it is like this. Retribution Paladin, it is A bit less than Arms Warrior. It is not like super necessary. You see that they have the kind of same numbers as DK, but it is a very good complementary comp. Like playing with an Arms Warrior, Retribution, Paladin, Demon Hunter. It's a very solid comp. You have like a big Hodge on the healers. You have CC. You have damage. You have again a lot of like wings because of your PvP talent, and you have a lot of crits in team fights. You just get wings like a lot of the time, so that's actually very great. And for me right now, I think it's like top 4 melee DPS. If you're really counting sub rogue like not as a melee DPS, I think it's top 4. I think it's very strong, and people kind of sleep on it, but I think in my opinion it is at the right spot, A tier. Protection Paladin is really F tier. I don't think it has redeemable factors for RBGs. Devastation, Disc Priest is S tier. Very good healing, very good Dome. Dome is very strong in team fights. It can pick the flag very correctly. It has some damage, but it has also PS. It has a lot of ways to multi-heal with Atonement healing. So in my opinion, it is really deserving S tier, and it's for me top 2. Holy Priest, I'm going to put them at below Resto Druid. I don't think it's very good. It has some AoE healing, but it's the only redeemable factor to Holy Priest. I think it's stopped easily. You don't have a lot of damage reduction. You don't have mobility. You cannot really spin the flag as well. So right now, I think it's going to be a C tier spec. Shadow Priest, I'm going to put them at... I think the damage is quite nice, though. And the CC is quite nice as well. I don't think you have a spot for Shadow Priest. That's the issue. So I'm going to put them at B tier. I think it's just because of the lack of spots you can have as a Shadow Priest. It has Dispel Protection, but it's like the weakest form of Dispel Protection. It has some damage, but again, you don't have the mobility. You only have the damage pretty much. So if you're not really topping meters, that's the only thing you have currently for you. You have the CC though. The CC is interesting, but again, you don't really usually build a team around the Shadow Priest, and I think that should be showing on the tier list. Windwalker in RBGs could be very strong, but it is just taking a spot of a DPS. I'm going to put them at the lower end of B tier. I think ahead of Windwalker, Feral Druid, to be honest. Windwalker, insane damage, insane AoE pressure. You have like AoE leg sweep for free. You have a TP to get away from murder. Very strong. But you're competing to 4 spots as a melee, and you have to fight Retribution Paladin, Holy DK, Arms Warrior, and Havoc Demon Hunter, which is not an easy task. In a 10v10 scenario where you need 3 healers, 6 DPS, and 1 tank, Windwalker is very hard to fit in one comp. Brewmaster, I would put them at D tier. They have mobility and they have some tankiness, but I don't think it is worth taking one Brewmaster instead of, like, let's say, waiting for Garden Druid, at least. Mistweaver Monk, I think top 1, the best healer out there. I think like this. A lot of CD, very short CDs. Revival is too strong. You can really negate any like kill target if you're doing it correctly. Very, very hard to catch up. It has kiting abilities, and they have CC. So for me, it is the best healer currently in the game. For RBGs, let me drink a bit. Destruction Warlock. So I think it is tied with the Bounce Druid. It has TP, it has Shadow Rift, which is perfect for defense. You can Shadow Rift people like beneath. Very strong. You have crowd control, you have damage, you have insane damage. You should like really win at meters if you're like fighting at team fights. It can handle nodes. I would say it's a waste of a resource by putting a Destruction Warlock at a node, but that's my opinion. I think Destruction Warlock has too much going on to just sit and do nothing. I think you have to put them at team fights, let them shine there, and put someone else on a node. I think Destruction Warlock right now is very, very strong. Affliction Warlock, I think it's on the same level as Shadow Priest. It's not a dampening meta, and you don't have dampening in RBGs. You can healers, but you're not going to them because of affliction Warlock. It has dispel protection though, so if you're hodging a target and he asks for a dispel, it can actually land a kill. But I don't think it's like game changing to have affliction Warlock. I think the affliction Warlock could just reroll or just respec into destruction Warlock, learn the spec, and do way better. For example. Demonology Warlock, I don't like them at RBGs. It kind of shows also on the representation. Yeah, I think it's C tier. I think it's like ahead of Survivor Hunter. I think it's same-ish than Fury Warriors. So for me right now, it is C tier because of the pets and the AI, and a lot of stuff can actually stop your pets from doing something. So for me right now, it is C tier. Frost Mage. Strong, but I think it's B tier. The issue is it's very hard to fit a mage. It has damage, but it is like manageable damage most of the time. I would say Frostbomb is very strong because people are not going to notice, and usually they dispel other things. And Real Frost can actually delete someone if you're not stopped, but yeah, I think Ice Wall on certain maps you can actually carry games as well, but it's very hard to justify a pick from a Frost Mage whenever you can actually have a Destruction Warlock or a Boomy at the same spot. So for me right now it is going to be a B tier spec. Arcane Mage, I would say the same pretty much. You have the same utility as a Frost Mage, the same kind of damage. You have still also Ice Wall as an Arcane Mage. You can actually win games because of that. So right now B tier, I think it's warranted. So right now it is warranted, just underplayed. I just think it's underplayed. I don't think it's like that bad. I think it's not like D tier, so, or not even C tier. So I'm going to put them at B tier. Fire Mage, I think I'm going to put them at C tier. It's too squishy. The damage is good, but I don't think it's like game changing. If you're like very low HP because of like the glass cannon PvP talent, you're really the most easily killed target in the game. One sharpened blade and you kind of have to ice block pretty much. So for now, I'm going to put them at C tier. Restoration Shaman, interesting, but it is the worst healer in the game. Also shows in the stats, but also shows in game like totems. People kinda can't stand on one spot in general, but also people are like outrange your totems pretty quickly, and you're just a utility machine which is relying on CDs, and the more CDs you have, the less likely it's going to be good in RPGs, because again, you're not going to wait 2 or 3 minutes doing nothing. You have to permanently do something, and Resto Shaman without CDs is pretty much like not that great. So I'm going to put them at lower than Holy Priest. I think ahead of Blood Decay though. But if you have a choice between healers, you would not take a Restoration Shaman. Enhancement Shaman, I think, am I too generous by putting him at C tier? I think I'm going to put them at C tier, below Resto Shaman. I think it's strong because of their damage, but it's very hard to actually think D tier. I think it's too hard to exist in games. It's tough. It's tough for Enhancement Shaman. Defenses are really bad. Your off heals are quite nice, but again, you take a DPS for the DPS bot, not for the utility bot. So right now, I think I'm going to put them at D tier. I'm going to keep them like this. I think Elemental Shaman is ahead of Affliction Warlock because it has more damage, in my opinion. It has utility. I think if you really need totems, Elemental Shaman actually has them, static field totem and such. I think it's like below MM, but I think it's in front of Unholy Decay. It has damage, it has CC. It's very hard to stop. And once you have a lot of flame shocks, it's actually very hard to survive. You kind of need a mistweaver to pretty much use revival to clean everyone, but it's not an easy task. Not everyone is going to get like a full-on reset because of that. So right now I'm going to put them at A tier. I think it's very strong. But yeah, it misses something to get higher. I think, again, Elemental Shaman, if you have a choice between a Destruction Warlock or Elemental Shaman, it has like a no contest, unfortunately. But this is pretty much my tier list for RBGs. It's very top heavy, but I think in RBGs most things are playable. Again, if you're making your own team, which I would recommend if you're playing like an off-spec spec, you kind of have to make your own team or your own friends to be able to go inside of those teams. Again, as a Frost Mage, it's very hard to find a team in LFG, but if you have like a guild or a community, you can actually just cramp up the Frost Mage or make your own roster with like a Frost Mage in it, which is you. But again, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Hopefully, the tier list has been done well enough. I think my explanation was to the point. So if you have questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Overall, I think RBGs are quite fun. I can't wait for solo queue RPG though, but I don't know whenever it's going to come out. But right now, this is a tier list, and hopefully you're going to play a bit more RBGs and have fun with it with a team or a community.